I've seen every kind of person walk through my courtroom. Rich, poor, young, old. But the most arrogant 21-year-old girl I ever met walked in my courtroom and told me I was powerless. Her father was County Sheriff Roberto Martinez. By the time she left, she understood what real power looks like in America. This is a story about respect, about the law, about why our democracy works when good people refuse to bend, and it's a story every American needs to hear. Before we dive in, I have a question. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city in the comments below, like this video, and subscribe to this channel. A young woman named Sarah Martinez crashed her pickup truck into Mrs. Henderson's brick mailbox on Maple Street. Mrs. Henderson is 68 years old, a widow who built that mailbox with her late husband 30 years back. Sarah destroyed it completely, doing 40 inches of 25 zone. Nearly took out a fire hydrant too. When patrol officers arrived, Sarah was stumbling around the wreckage. The smell of alcohol was strong. She couldn't walk a straight line. Her blood test came back at 0.12, well over our 0.08 legal limit. Simple drunk driving case. Should have been routine booking, court appearance, standard penalties. But nothing about the Martinez family was routine. The arresting officer was Sergeant Williams. 15 years on the force, clean record, never had a corruption complaint. He tried to process Sarah normally. Handcuffs, Miranda rights, transport to county jail for booking. That's when Sarah started making calls, not to a lawyer. She called her father directly, Sheriff Roberto Martinez. "Dad," she told him while sitting in the back of the patrol car, "these idiots arrested me. Fix this now." Within 20 minutes, Sheriff Martinez showed up at the scene. He wore his full uniform, badge displayed prominently. He was acting in an official capacity instead of a personal one. He told Sergeant Williams, "This is a family matter. My daughter made a mistake tonight. Had too much to drink. We'll handle it privately. No need for charges. No need for paperwork. I'll make sure she gets home safe. No need for charges. For drunk driving. For destroying an elderly woman's property. For reckless endangerment. Because it's a family matter, and the sheriff says so." Sergeant Williams, good man with 15 years of experience and a backbone made of steel, he explained patiently that drunk driving isn't a family matter, it's public safety. He told the sheriff, "Mrs. Henderson's destroyed mailbox isn't a private issue. Your daughter's blood alcohol level of 0.12 isn't something you handle with a family talk." He said to the sheriff respectfully, "With respect, Sheriff, your daughter committed multiple violations tonight. I have to process these charges according to department policy." That's when Sheriff Martinez got aggressive, stepped closer to Williams, used his height and position to intimidate. He told him, "Sergeant Williams, you work for this county. I run this county. My daughter walks out of here tonight without charges, or you'll be directing traffic at school crossings tomorrow morning. Are we clear? Direct threat, using official position to obstruct justice, attempting to interfere with a legitimate arrest, all felonies. I have a quick question, please answer. If you were Sergeant Williams facing your boss threatening your career, would you still file those charges? Yes or no? Tell me in the comments." Because Sergeant Williams didn't back down. He filed the charges anyway, followed proper procedure, documented everything, including the sheriff's interference. Because that's what good cops do when corruption wears a uniform. Yes, I know it looks very strange, but stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you next changed everything. When Sarah Martinez walked into my courtroom the next morning, she had no idea her whole world was about to flip upside down. The next morning, I arrived at my desk. Christina, my court clerk, handed me my coffee, strong Italian blend like always, and the night's arrest files. Sarah Martinez's case was right on top, thicker than usual for a simple DUI. That's when I noticed Sergeant Williams's supplemental report about Sheriff Martinez's interference at the arrest scene. I read it twice. Every detail documented, every threat recorded, every attempt to obstruct justice written down clearly. I've known Roberto Martinez for years. He's been county sheriff for over 2 decades. Mostly did good work, kept crime rates down, ran a professional department. But here's what I've learned in my 76 years: power reveals character. And sometimes what it reveals isn't pretty. Christina called the case. Sarah Martinez, she announced. Driving under the influence, property damage, reckless driving, and resisting arrest. I looked up from my papers. Sarah Martinez walked into my courtroom like she was entering a shopping mall. Expensive sneakers that probably cost more than most people's monthly groceries. Leather jacket that looked like it came from some fancy boutique. But it wasn't the clothes that bothered me. It was the attitude, the way she walked, the smirk on her face. Like this whole thing was just a minor inconvenience that would get sorted out once people understood who her father was. Her father wasn't with her. Smart move, actually. After last night's interference attempt, his presence might draw unwanted attention. But his absence wouldn't save his daughter from facing what she'd done. Sarah walked up to my bench. I could see it radiating off her. Not worried like most drunk driving defendants. Not respectful like young people who understand they broke serious laws. Not embarrassed like someone who nearly killed an elderly woman. Just annoyed, like she had better places to be. I began, "Miss Martinez, you're charged with operating a vehicle while intoxicated with a blood alcohol level of 0.12. Property damage to Mrs. Henderson's mailbox. Reckless driving in a residential neighborhood. Do you understand these charges?" She shrugged at me. Then she said, "Yeah, I understand them. But I think we need to clear something up here before this goes any further." Clear something up. That's the phrase entitled people use when they think their connections trump the law. I asked her, "What needs clearing up, Miss Martinez?" She leaned casually against the defendant's table, like she was lounging at a coffee shop instead of standing in a court of law. She told me, "Look, Judge, I know my dad already talked to people about this situation. This whole thing is just a big misunderstanding that got blown out of proportion." A misunderstanding. Drunk driving is a misunderstanding. Destroying a 6-8-year-old widow's property is a misunderstanding. Endangering an entire neighborhood where families sleep with their windows open is a misunderstanding. I said to her, "Miss Martinez, your blood alcohol was 0.12, well over the legal limit. You crashed into Mrs. Henderson's mailbox doing 40 inches a 25 zone. What part of that is a misunderstanding?" Her voice more aggressive. She shot back at me, "The part where I get arrested and dragged through court like some common criminal. Do you know who my father is, Judge?" There it was. The magic phrase entitled "People Think" solves all their problems. I told her, "Yes, Miss Martinez, I know who your father is. Do you know who I am?" She gave me this dismissive look and said, "You're a municipal judge. Local level stuff. Traffic tickets, small claims, minor violations. My dad runs the whole county sheriff's department. Different leagues, you know. Different leagues. Like municipal court is somehow beneath county law enforcement, like judges are minor officials compared to sheriffs." Yes, I know she is very disrespectful, but I need to continue because what came out of her mouth in the next few minutes, it shocked everyone in that courtroom. And my response is going to show you why our justice system still works in America. I realized this young woman had no understanding of how our government works, how checks and balances function, how the separation of powers protects our democracy. I kept my voice level but firm. I told her, "Miss Martinez, in this courtroom, I decide what happens to people who break the law. That includes drunk drivers who happen to be related to law enforcement." She laughed at me, made sure everyone in the courtroom could see her amusement at what she thought was my ignorance. She said through her laughter, "Judge, with all due respect, you're completely powerless here. You think you make decisions? You think you control outcomes? My dad controls all the cops, all the arrests, all the evidence, all the enforcement. Without his cooperation, you can't do anything to anyone. You're just a guy in a robe pretending to have authority." This 21-year-old girl just told a sitting judge he's powerless because her daddy wears a badge, just declared that law enforcement families are immune from judicial authority, that sheriffs outrank judges, that corruption trumps justice as long as it comes with a uniform. The courtroom went dead silent. Everyone stopped what they were doing. Other defendants waiting for their cases. Court officers, bail bondsmen, even Christina at her desk. They all stared at this girl who just declared judges have no authority over sheriffs' families. I stood up from my bench. I said to her, "Miss Martinez, did you just tell me I'm powerless?" She replied with that same arrogant confidence, "I'm just stating facts. You need evidence to convict people, right? My dad controls the evidence. You need police cooperation for enforcement? My dad controls the police. You need jail space for sentences? My dad runs the jail. So yeah, when it comes to my family, you're pretty much powerless. That's just reality." She actually believed the justice system was some kind of game where her father held all the cards, that sheriffs are above judges, that law enforcement families are immune from consequences. that badges create a separate class of citizenship with special privileges and protections. Behind Sarah, I could see other defendants watching this exchange with amazement. Working people mostly. Folks who've never imagined telling a judge he's powerless. People who understand that showing respect in a courtroom isn't optional. That challenging judicial authority is like challenging gravity. It might feel good for a moment, but the landing is going to hurt. I continued, Miss Martinez, you seem to have a fundamental misunderstanding about how the justice system works in America. She crossed her arms and told me, I understand perfectly. Power protects power, money protects money, badges protect badges. My dad has real power. Guns, badges, jail cells, the ability to make people's lives very difficult. You just have a robe and a wooden hammer. Just a robe and a gavel. This girl thought judicial authority was costume jewelry compared to her father's badge. She saw democracy as a hierarchy with law enforcement at the top and judges somewhere below, taking orders instead of giving them. I've been on this bench for over 30 years. I've seen entitled people before. But this level of disrespect, this fundamental misunderstanding of what holds America together, I had to address it. Not just for Sarah Martinez, for everyone in that courtroom, for every citizen who wonders if justice still works when powerful people break the law. I told her, Miss Martinez, let me show you what real power looks like in a democracy. I sentenced her to the maximum penalty for first offense DUI, 6 months license suspension, $1,000 fine, 40 hours community service at a senior center, specifically helping elderly residents, mandatory alcohol education classes, and 60 days in county jail with work release privileges. Her smirk disappeared instantly. Her face went white. She shouted, What? You can't do that. I told her, I just did. Bailiff, please take Miss Martinez into custody. Officer Rodriguez, one of my court officers for 15 years, approached with handcuffs. Sarah started yelling, Wait! My father won't allow this. I said to her, Your father has no authority in my courtroom. She screamed, He'll have you removed. He'll make sure you never work again. I looked at her calmly and said, Miss Martinez, threatening a judge is contempt of court. That's an additional 30 days. As Officer Rodriguez cuffed her and read her Miranda rights, Sarah kept yelling about her father, about how this wouldn't stand, about how I didn't understand who I was messing with, about how her dad would fix everything. But here's the beautiful thing about justice in America. It doesn't care who your father is. It doesn't care how much money you have. It doesn't care what position your family holds. The law applies equally to everyone, or it applies to no one. 2 hours later, my phone rang. It was Sheriff Roberto Martinez. He said, Judge Caprio, I need to discuss my daughter's situation. I told him, Sheriff, your daughter was sentenced according to law. There's nothing to discuss. He said, Judge, Sarah is a good kid who made one bad decision. Surely we can work something out. I said to him, Sheriff, the law doesn't make exceptions for law enforcement families. His voice got firmer. He told me, Judge, I've served this community for 25 years. I think that earns some consideration. I replied, Sheriff, your service is commendable, but it doesn't purchase immunity for your daughter. Long pause on the line. When he spoke again, his voice was colder. He said, Judge, I control all law enforcement in this county. Without my cooperation, your courtroom becomes powerless. Now the sheriff was threatening me too. The father following the daughter's playbook. I asked him directly, Sheriff Martinez, are you threatening this court? He told me, I'm explaining reality. I said, Sheriff Martinez, if you interfere with your daughter's sentence, I'll hold you in contempt and have you arrested by state police. I hung up and immediately called the state attorney general's office. Within an hour, 2 state investigators were in my chambers taking my statement about attempted obstruction of justice by a county sheriff. The real test came that evening. Sarah was supposed to report to county jail for her first night, 8 p.m. Deadline, 8 o'clock came and went. No Sarah Martinez. I called the jail directly. The booking officer, someone I've worked with for years, he told me Sheriff Martinez had been there all evening, actively preventing his daughter from being processed, standing in the booking area, using his authority to block his own deputies from doing their jobs. I called state police immediately. I told them, this is Judge Frank Caprio. I need a warrant executed for failure to report to sentencing. Within 30 minutes, state troopers arrested Sarah at a party. She was still drinking. celebrating her father's protection. They transported her to state holding facility, bypassing county jail entirely. Next morning, Sarah was back in my courtroom, the arrogance completely gone from her face. I said, "Miss Martinez, you failed to report for sentencing last night. That's a violation of court order." She told me quietly, "Your Honor, there was confusion." I replied, "Miss Martinez, 8 p.m. is not confusing. Your father preventing you from serving your sentence is obstruction of justice." She said, her voice breaking, "Your Honor, I want to apologize." I told her, "Miss Martinez, for failure to report, I'm adding 90 days to your sentence. For your father's interference, I'm referring this matter to the State Attorney General for criminal investigation." Her face went completely white. She asked me, "You're going to have my father arrested?" I said, "Your father attempted to obstruct justice. That's a felony, regardless of what badge he wears." 2 weeks later, Sheriff Roberto Martinez was arrested by state investigators, charged with obstruction of justice, abuse of official position, and attempted witness intimidation. The case made headlines across the state. Sarah served her full sentence in state custody. She worked in the prison laundry, attended her alcohol education classes, did her time like everyone else. 6 months after her release, something unexpected happened. Sarah came back to my courtroom, but this time she came voluntarily. She asked to speak at a program we run for young offenders, teaching them about consequences and accountability. She stood before a group of teenagers and told them, "Your Honor, I want to tell these kids what I learned about real power." I nodded for her to continue. She said, "I thought my dad's badge made me untouchable. I thought judges were powerless compared to law enforcement. I walked into this courtroom thinking I was special, that rules didn't apply to me, that my last name was a shield." She turned to the teenagers sitting. "I was completely wrong. Real power isn't about who you know. Real power isn't about your father's position or your family's money. Real power is accountability. This judge taught me that nobody, absolutely nobody, is above the law in America." After the session ended, Sarah approached my bench. She told me, "Your Honor, I completed my associate's degree while serving my sentence. I'm enrolled at Providence College now, studying social work. I want to help young people avoid the mistakes I made." I shook her hand and told her, "Miss Martinez, that's the best news I've heard all week. You've turned this into something positive." Her father served 18 months in federal prison, lost his position as county sheriff, lost his pension, lost everything he'd built over 25 years because he thought his badge placed him above the law. Real power in America isn't about guns or badges or money or connections. Real power is ensuring the law applies equally to everyone, rich or poor, young or old, sheriff's daughter or working person. Everyone stands equal before the law. Sarah Martinez learned that judicial power isn't costume jewelry. It's the foundation of democracy itself. Her father learned that wearing a badge doesn't place you above the law. It places you under an even higher standard. That's what makes America work. That's what keeps us free. That's why we have courtrooms where a judge in a robe with a wooden hammer can look a sheriff's daughter in the eye and say, "No, the law applies to you too." Thanks for listening, and God bless America, where justice still means something. See you next case.